This is the I Heart My Life show. We have Bella Lively here for the I Heart My Life show. I am so excited about this conversation. I know that I say that with every guest, but honestly, you and I had a 3-hour lunch the other day, just a few weeks ago, which I never do. Like, honestly, I never do that. So I know that if this conversation is anything like what we had in person, it's going to be super juicy and just really supportive for everyone listening. So welcome to the show, Bella.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here.
So I was thinking about when I first came across you and your work, and it was around 2014 when I was just starting my coaching business. I believe you were in Chicago at the time, married, you had a little dog, you always talked about Mr. Lively. I remember
Yes, yes.
even talked about like interior design as well as, the coaching space and the mentoring space. So your life looks completely different now.
I look completely different now. I was just looking at a vlog from just after that period. My husband and I, at that time, moved in 2015 to Michigan. And I had a vlog after we split up. And I literally do not look like the same person. Like, it's shocking. If you go to my YouTube and scroll all the way to the end, and you look at me now in the recent videos versus it's I am not the same person. I have a different name. I feel completely different. I feel like that is a sister or a past life of myself.
I know it really is. And I have to say, seeing you in person a few weeks ago, you've never looked better. You've never looked more like yourself and who I would envision you to be. And so it's just so beautiful kind of, to witness that journey for those people who are in your world. They've seen it virtually, maybe they've seen it in person, but yeah, it's amazing. So I want to go back to that period of time though. And I'd love for you to talk about like what were some of the initial things that really kind of instigated this huge change and you coming back to who you really are? What were some of those key moments or key feelings that caused you to make such big changes?
Well, I think it was learning how to communicate with my intuition, our inner voice, as I call it. And so, in learning how to do that, I was obviously, as you mentioned, if you reference all the way back to Chicago and the little dog in the house, or Michigan, even married, my intuition flowed me into getting a very peaceful and harmonious divorce. So we completed that relationship. And then I was in this little house in Michigan alone, and I decided to take a trip to Europe just for fun since I was now single and living in this house. And a woman begged to buy my house and all my furniture through a real estate agent that watched me and my husband divorce the day that he was leaving. She was outside the house next door, so she knew my situation. And my intuition said yes. So I would say my inner voice and all of these pivot points and guiding me through step by step to doing things that I never imagined I would ever do. And then to be fair, like for the next 9 years, I didn't always want to do in my mind, but I just had the courage to keep following here rather than here. And I think that as for those that are listening, I guess I would keep following my intuition rather than my mind. And I think knowing that you don't have to do what your mind wants you to do. If you have clarity in your inner voice, you can go against your mind and still survive. And not only survive in enough time, you will thrive and you will have transforms in your own unique way that may look as different as mine transformation has.
Yeah, totally. And so in the beginning, when you were starting to listen to your inner voice and your intuition, what did that look like? Because I think a lot of people think about this like booming voice from God. And, I'd love for you to share a little bit, especially with the divorce. What did that start coming through as or look like for you?
Well, the divorce itself was very interesting. So I actually learned about this in a breakup with a college boyfriend. So I was going through a breakup in my mid 20s, right before I met my husband. And I remember I was going through a breakup. So I picked up my old copy of Eat, Pray, Love. And in the book, she has one sentence. Now, millions have read the book, but not everyone ended up doing what I ended up doing, which was she had a statement that said, when I write down questions, I get peaceful answers. I needed peaceful answers. So I started writing down questions and I started getting answers that were peaceful, like she said. So I kept doing that. And obviously, it was I tripped over as the dinosaur bone and then I kept excavating around that. So now I have a modality. I have my inner voice has taught me many facets of the work that is just truly, besides that sentence in the book, everything else is like self-taught. So the divorce, however, though, is different actually. I think it was a setup for me as the Jess character that, because my name was Jess for those listening. I was born Jessica Constable, and now I'm Bella Lively. My inner voice said to the Bella name means I married Lively, thank God, Bella. Bella being the beauty of being alive. So that's the the meaning of my name now. But the divorce, Jessica needed to get married. I don't think I could have followed my inner voice if I hadn't had the chance to be married and then also have the sovereign choice to detach and to divorce. And so it didn't tell me to get divorced. I started to communicate with it. And I would ask every now and then when we were in a fight, is this how we're supposed to break up? And it would always say, no, it wasn't, it wasn't, it wasn't. And then at this specific point where it was time to actually do the completion, it gave me a set of situations that I wasn't even looking for. I was going to have a house addition and start having children. There was no part of me that was unhappy in any way whatsoever. But the universe, as myself being the universe, started laying out opportunities to contemplate the idea that I could have a bigger, different life. Now, of course, at that time, my mind thought a bigger, different life would be a different partner that I would still have kids with and still have a house and still be in America with. So I just thought I would get basically a change in the partnership. Basically, at the end of the day, that husband and I were great friends. It was like we were brother and sister. And so it was very peaceful breakup because we were kind of different people, but we just got along really well. And we still even got along well in the transition out of it. But it didn't actually tell me to. It let me choose as the human mind. And I think that I blessed that experience. It was so wise of my inner voice, which is, of course, it's wisdom. But I would have been bitter in my mind if I never got the chance to be married. I hope to be married again in the future with an amazing partner that's right for me now. But I needed to go through I couldn't have gone through those 9 years. I would have settled mentally and caved, but I'm glad I got the chance to experience it and then sell the house and just do what my inner voice had in mind, which is a whole lot more than I ever imagined.
And so you mentioned that your inner voice is the universe and vice versa. Is that right?
You are the universe. So what people are pure consciousness creating realities, and we're all creating our own. So the way I view it is a little bit like VR goggles. So you're kind of in your own, and I'm in my own. Like we're in the shared squares on our computer screens, but really I'm in my own reality and you're in your own reality. And we have this shared screen experience. And we think that we're in the same place, but really we're in two different places. So the universe that I'm mentioning is like myself, the greater me that I am, creating the experience and simulation, if you will, I'm in, is what set all of that up for me to happen. So I definitely feel like not every single thing was hyper laid out or planned, but that divorce was so orchestrated and the sale of the house was insanely synchronistic that there's no way that couldn't have. I just cannot imagine with all of the little pieces that fell into place in so many ways. We could spend a whole hour talking about just the synchronicities of that experience alone, let alone everything else happening since. So yeah, you're the universe, you're creating your own reality, but you have this greater part of you, this inner voice aspect of yourself that has more wisdom, insight, and guidance for you as the human in the mind than most people are using. They don't know that they have it, so they kind of ignore it, or they occasionally get a little drop or a little glimpse at it. So yeah, and to go back to your original question, I wrote a lot to my inner voice and now obviously don't need to do the writing part of it. I can just like on demand, just start talking. And if I'm going to actually do a deep conversation with my inner voice, most of the time now I'll just put on my voice note recorder, close my eyes, lay down and just start talking out of my mouth and then recording what my inner voice says so that I can re-listen to it afterwards.
That's so great. And so for anyone listening, would you recommend that they start with the journaling or do you go straight to the conversation?
There's actually two different things. I'd say journaling, if you're going to do it on your own right away. I just think writing oftentimes is an easier way for you to hold your mind open longer to get more out. At least that was true for me. And then also so people in my community started asking me in 2020 to create a modality to train them in my process that I was doing with them. They wanted to be me with their own clients. So we've had about 250, close to 300 people have done the training across the world. And so there's still many active, facilitators. Some of them have weaved it into other trainings. We've got nurses, tech, startup people, tons of healing modality people, etc. But you can actually work with a client in a client session with someone to actually really get a lot more space and a lot more clarity a lot faster. So I'd say if you want like the supercharged way, working with a facilitator, and you go to my website, there's a find a facilitator page. Just pick somebody that sparks joy. But that experience of someone helping you and guiding you through the breathing, through the emotional beanbags that might be present, and really holding that space for you is going to be the fast track to getting there. But you can always just start by writing if you're doing it yourself.
So good. Yeah, everyone, we'll link that below. So I know one of the things that you talk about is flow.
Yep.
So can you talk to our listeners a little bit about what that actually means and how you get yourself into a flow state?
Well, I don't know about, I have not read books on flow and anybody's, flow state. I don't even know how other people describe a flow state. But for me, when I say flow, I talk a lot about alignment and a lot about flow. And a lot of that language comes from the teachings of Abraham Hicks that I've learned from for many, many years. So for anyone that's familiar with Abraham, when I speak about flow, I'm really speaking about kind of how they describe that. So I love to basically find, looking at the energy of my life and the situations that are playing out, what is the flow? What is the energy guiding me towards? What is going really easily and what is going not so easily? And the way of finding flow, I usually use alignment first. So, alignment before action is one of my principles. Again, Abraham shared it. I've just incorporated it into my DNA and try to get my community because I found how effective it really is. Alignment is basically doing things that make you feel good. I remember, by the way, at your house, I was watching your cat years ago, 2018. I think you guys were away. And I remember this story I always say about flow, and it happened to be in your house at the time. So I had emails to answer that day. It's a great example of alignment and flow. So I didn't want to answer the emails, but I had this thing in my head that I have to answer. I don't even know how many emails, but they're in the inbox and I didn't want to do it. So it wasn't feeling aligning. It didn't feel good to do it. So I was like, okay, I don't feel like doing that, but I feel like I should do it, but I'm not. And so I laid on your sofa in the basement and I had these chocolates, Rocco chocolates or Roco
Yeah.
chocolate. So I had the like lavender and rose little stuffed chocolates that taste so good. I just sat on your sofa with my laptop watching Gilmore Girls reruns from Netflix, eating the chocolates. And I just felt so happy and indulgent because it was in the middle of the afternoon in London. And I was just like, I'm just doing this instead. And the thing was, I'd seen the Gilmore Girls shows before. So as I was watching it, I would get bored of the rerun that I'm watching. And so I would switch over into my inbox and I would like answer an email. And then I would go back to the show and I would be eating the chocolates as I watched it. And I ended up answering all the emails, but that was in a flow. So basically, I got myself into alignment. I ate the chocolate. I watched the show. That's what I wanted. That was the path of least resistance and most joy. But then through that, without even trying to effort, the emails flowed because my attention span wasn't encapsulated in the video itself or the TV show. So that was a great example, would happen to be at your house at the time, of flow. So I got happy and then I flowed into action. Nowadays, what I do when I was just at Soho House today, I do this often. I love going there and I love starting a Word document. And this document is probably 2,000 pages long, maybe longer now, but it's just a simple page document where I just write down things I appreciate. Because one of the things when I was in the hot seat with Abraham, the only time I was in the hot seat with them, they said, no thought is fine. Because I just said, if we just don't even have thought, then we won't have any resistance. And they said, true. But what's even more powerful than no thought is appreciation. And so I think I kind of took that on. And so what I do now, instead of watching Gilmore Girls and chocolate on your sofa, is I will write down things I appreciate over and over and over and over. This is like a 2,000 page gratitude list at this point. And it's just, I appreciate my floral arrangement. I appreciate having the interview with Emily later today. I appreciate this Christmas candle that's sitting next to me. I just think about things I appreciate and I type it down. And as I do, just like the Gilmore Girls, I get distractible, but the distractibleness will then flow me into the inbox or flow me into researching something for a new company I'm doing. It'll flow me into different things and then I'll do the thing and then I go back to the list. So basically, I don't work. I appreciate things and work gets done through the appreciation list that can be a few hours long.
Oh, I love this so much. And it's making me think of one of the principles that I live my life by. So I don't actually believe, like, take a relationship, for example. I don't actually believe that one person is happy and the other person isn't, and that you have to sacrifice something to make somebody else happy, and that, you have to give up the stuff that you don't love. And again, I know that's like a very extreme example, but I believe that if something is important to your partner, but not necessarily important to you, you can choose to get yourself into more of a state like what you're talking about about and show appreciation for different things or have gratitude or just shift your energy so that it does end up feeling good and you're not actually sacrificing yourself and your joy to do that thing that somebody else wants you to do. Or when people talk about like, oh, but business is hard, you need to put in the steps and do the things. You are talking about, yes, there are things that you get to do as a business owner that might not necessarily feel aligned, but you don't have to do it begrudgingly. You can get yourself into that aligned state first so it does feel good when you're doing it. Did I get that right?
100%. And that's like, I have a friend that's had taxes that are overdue for her like last year, I think. And she's not a very apt business person. She's far more a designer. And I said, okay, she's been talking about this for months. I was like, let's get the taxes done. It's like, go put on a playlist, like make get your holiday candle out, like make the environment of all of this fun. Actually, it's kind of like a spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down, like a profits,
That's
find a way to make what you're doing really, really joyful. There's no reason
Mm.
not to, except for your own lack of creativity and the story that says life is hard. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be suffering. But that's where this alignment factor is so essential to make yourself happy. And then is kind of how Abraham would put it, get into alignment and then. And that's literally the story of as simple as watching Gilmore Girls and answering emails was getting into alignment and then, or now I don't do that. I just appreciate and then I'll take action. And it never feels like work. If you just put me in, it's like a warm up. Like I wouldn't go sprint in the Olympics. That was doing a very good warm up and getting my muscles very ready to leap into action. So I feel like if you told me just answer emails right now, there is like no warm up. It's just like to start. I cannot just sit and do. There's that talking about flow. There's this flow of joyful activities leading into other activities that kind of benefit from that joy. So it's much, much more beautiful way of being and existing without things feeling so start and hard.
Yeah. I love how you said benefiting from that joy. Like, how often are we thinking in that way, or we're not most of the time? What can benefit from the joy that I put into this or infuse into this situation or into this email or this conversation?
Well, okay. So if you have joy infusing into the email, the energy going into that experience for the receiver is going to match the energy you've put in. So you getting to alignment is giving you the highest potential outcomes from everything. So me talking with you now, I feel really nice. I feel a little spacey. I could tell my consciousness is like, woo, it's like all over. I'm like, if I can't even hold the thought of the question you're asking me, sometimes my brain is like, but I'm happy. There's like this consciousness in me that is really present, but it's not in my mind. So there's this happy joy it's a little bit loopy and woo in my head, I notice right now, if I'm honest, but there's this alignment of frequency in me that is quite high. And that energy, even if what I say rambles and doesn't even answer your question, I don't know how it's coming across for a listener or viewer, but that energy of me is probably going to speak more than the words that I say exclusively.
Totally. And I've always admired that about you. And as you mentioned, we connected in person in 2018 when we were both living in London, and you're still there. And we met up a few weeks ago when I was visiting. And I remember texting you on the bus because I was taking the bus to go meet you. And I was like, just so you know, I've been crying. I had this really hard morning. Like, basically, if you don't want me to come, I totally understand because I know that your vibe is really important to you and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, it's totally okay. I deal with crying people all the time.
Literally, it's my absolute actual job. I'm going to do it in 24 minutes. I'm going to see a bunch of people cry in Sophia's session.
Yeah. And, I don't want you to feel like I'm there and you're having to coach me, right? Like I wanted to have a beautiful experience, but we're there for all of it. And you were so gracious and so amazing. And we had such a great conversation. So that's one of the things I've always admired about you is just like your frequency and your vibe, but also your willingness to feel what needs to be felt and to explore what the reality is, what's really coming up. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Before we get back to the interview, I wanted to share a little something I think you'll find valuable. If you're looking for more clarity on what you want in life or feel like something is holding you back, I've created a free Dream Life Guide just for you. It's a step-by-step resource to help you get clear on your goals and break through any mindset blocks that might be in the way. You can grab it at iheartmylife.com/guide. And as a bonus, I've also included a private podcast feed to go along with the guide to give you even more value and support. So head over to iheartmylife.com/guide to download it for free. All right, now back to the conversation. When you are in a place that might be challenging or might feel like things aren't working or not where you want to be, what are some of your practices that will help you get back to where you want to be?
Well, it's definitely true. And I'll say I am not a shaman that like gets off on the excitement of the drama of emotion. Like that's not me. I'm also not so wooey that I'm going to try to spiritually bypass and pretend there's no dirt on my shoes when there's dirt on my shoes. I recognize that shoes don't always have to be dirty and we don't have to roll in the dirt forever, but I do understand the duality of this reality. Things happen, emotions get collected. They don't have to stay there. We don't ignore them. We dissolve them. We actually clean the shoes, in my analogy. So that is a huge piece of my work because it is effective. I'm not obsessed with it, but it is something that has to be done. When the shoes are dirty, you got to clean them. Otherwise, you're taking that dirt everywhere else you go. If you have these emotions inside, you don't clear them off. You're going to take that into the room with your daughter. You're going to take that into the meeting with your client. That energy is still in you. And then also, a part of the manifesting reality you're going to experience. So it is essential to clear them. I never teach how to clear a bean. I call them emotional bean bags because the first one that my inner voice had me clear in myself felt like a small bean bag being pulled out of my stomach. I was very confused, going, what is going on? It was so weird and uncomfortable. It was non-physical, of course, but it felt like a bean bag. And so when I experienced this, my inner voice taught me how to do this one after the other after the other. I did like 100 or so, like in this first experience that I did it. I was like, oh my God. And I just kept noticing how much better I felt every time one was released. And that's how it taught me through myself. I went back to Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now. I was like, we didn't explain this. Like, where is this? And then I realized he's like, calls it the pain body. But when he called it the pain body, I did not understand the concept because it went over my head with the term he used. So when I say beanbagging, pain body made me think that the boogeyman's going to take me over and I'm going to be enraged. And I was like terrified of the idea of the pain body taking me over. But when I realized what it actually felt like in the first time was that beanbag, it's like, oh, well, I don't have to be afraid of a beanbag. Like that's totally manageable. So that's what I call it. My community all knows the term, but I don't teach how to do it because I don't think it helps to give steps. That's like telling you, if you say, how do you surf? And I said, oh, well, when you get in the water and you bring your board and then you go into this part of the ocean and you hop on it and then you kind of wait for this, your mind's gonna hear it and think, oh yeah, I know how to do that. But you actually will go in the ocean and have no idea how to do that because you have to practice it in the moment being in the water. You can't mentally hear it and actually do it. You have to physically do it in order to do it. So it's if I'm even going to teach it, I'd rather teach someone by doing it. Or if I'm not going to teach the listener to do it directly through a session themselves, I could teach you and then they could watch you actually do it.
Thank you so much for sharing that process because you're totally right. There's some things that you have to just experience versus have like a step by step. So, thank you. One of the things I want to talk about right away, though, is this concept of cleaning pipes because I was listening to one of your episodes, your recent episodes, and you said that you were tapping into your inner voice and you were like, there's 33% blockage basically and it was around this belief system around relationships. So I did the exercise for myself and I'll tell you what came up for me, but can you talk a little bit about that for everyone listening or watching?
Yes, this is in my Sophia sessions. Recently in May, I started a series, a practice basically, and I was thinking about what I believe in past lives, as my community knows. I don't know if your community is on board with that or not, but I didn't originally believe in those. But over the time of my inner voice and everything I've experienced, I definitely have become believer in all of that work. And I feel like I've got a lot of lives in the past that had to do with this blend of the non-physical to physical reality. And one of the things that I was thinking about was that I bet that like Buddha and Jesus and a lot of the Gnostics and the Essenes and all these religions and esoteric studies over the years had rituals and practices that we will call even just church. But church has kind of died for a lot of the population. And also, what church became was more about listening to some guy, usually rather unwise person stuck in their head with a power hungry agenda and the later, more recent hundreds of years in some cases. So we kind of lost what that might have actually been. So I was trying to think about how would I help people connect to the divinity that they are and in a practice. So I started the Sophia sessions. Sophia means wisdom in Greek. So that's why I named it Sophia sessions. And I love the Gnostics, and that was a part of their work as well. And so those sessions I've been doing daily Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. And in it, I've been doing this so many times now that I've started to realize with my community that they had these pipe. I was just started thinking of them as a pipe and allowing their energy of their flow to come through. And I was trying to working with them every day as I started thinking about this pipe clearing thing. So we did a whole Sophia session, and it's actually now a downloadable, purchasable, hour-long, repeatable on your own time whenever you feel blocked kind of thing. But that episode you heard was me speaking around the same topic. So I started asking them in the class, inner voice. So I'd ask the clients in the Sophia session to ask their inner voice, how much is the percentage that they're blocked right now? Like how much of total potential energy flowing through their pipe that they could have, how much is actually able to come through? And they would get, anywhere between their 55% blocked, 80% blocked, 44, 95%. The gamut is really possible. And then I would ask them, inner voice, what is the belief or the emotion that is that block? So if there's a blocked pipe, inner voice, it's 40% blocked. What's it blocked with? It's like, well, 40% of it is hair in the shower drain. Okay, but this would be like the belief of, for me, it was that I had this belief I didn't know I had that was, I will be more unlimited in abundance with a partner than before having a partner. Because logic told me that if you put 1 + 1 = 2. So if you take my money plus the partner's money, there's more money. And my inner voice said, no, if you're already unlimited, you will just continue to match unlimited. So you might as well be unlimited now on the way to finding a partner. It's not about adding that person's abundance into your life for more unlimitedness, because infinity is already infinity. You can't add more infinity to itself. So stop making yourself limited to be unlimited later. Be unlimited now. That was that 30% block for myself.
Yeah, and when you have that belief system, you're going to keep yourself out of a relationship. What was the belief system what was it perpetuating?
No, it wasn't saying it wasn't going to keep me out of a relationship, but it was
Oh, right.
it's going to keep me out of having unlimited abundance.
Right now when you aren't in a
Yes,
relationship. Got it.
I was
Yeah.
not going to have as much money as I could have because I was keeping the belief true. I was creating my own reality based on this subconscious belief that made no logical sense.
So proud.
Yeah, that's what I would do with the clients in the Sophia session is then say, okay, that block, that belief system, where is it in the body? And then I would beanbag it with them. So that's what I can do with you. Actually, if you got your answer of what you got, what percentage did you get that was blocked?
So I got 26% was blocked, and the belief was that I don't think I can have it all and still be loved.
Classic, very normal mind belief system. Okay, now do you want to actually clear that? Do you want to do that as the beanbag? That's a block.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll do that in just a second.
Okay.
And I was so surprised that still came up because it's something I've dealt with for many years, and it came up again in a plant medicine ceremony that I know I want to have this big life, but although I grew up with a lot, I feel like I'm going to be judged, especially by family, for having this big life and almost be like ostracized essentially. And so, yeah, that's one I'm still dealing with. So we'll clear that.
Question, inner voice. Do you know how to get to your inner voice if I say that? Do you know here? Okay. Inner voice, is that a past life or just this life thing?
I think it's a past life.
That's why it would be so persistent. So when you can't just erase something like a beanbag, like I'm going to do with you, there's oftentimes, not all the time, and the more you've gone down the path of spirituality, the more often you're going to find that this is kind of the case. You're going to find that there's a past life that's got it. So the way I say that is I'm in an apartment building and there might be a band in the building next door to me playing, and I can hear the music in this room. Like you're hearing this belief and you're like, well, I want to go away. I'm looking for where do I turn off the music? I have to go to the other place where the band's actually playing in order to stop the band. And once they do, I stop hearing it in my house too. And so if it's super unrelentingly persistent, 80% of the time, that is because of a past life that has the same storyline playing, and their situation, like the band is a lot louder in the actual room they're in. I'm hearing a softer echo of that.
Right.
You're hearing it at a softer decibel, but the past life is hearing it full on, full frontal, and it makes 100% sense based on the storyline that it's playing out, why it's feeling the way it is. You might be like, this feels oddly intense for what I'm actually experiencing in my reality, because you're feeling that intensity of the other life's reaction, not your physical manifested version of it.
Yes. Okay, cool. So I'm excited to do that. We'll do that in a few minutes. I know I'm kind of building it up. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about here before we let you go on the podcast episode is around desires. So in another episode I listened to with you, it might have been the same one actually, you said that you heard something that Abraham Hicks said many, many times in all of your years of study, but you heard it essentially for the first time.
Yeah.
And it was, I'm going to paraphrase, but you basically said that you have to stay up to date with your desires. And that like hit me like a ton of bricks in a positive way. That's a terrible phrase because that's helping people revisit their desires time and time again because they're always changing and your desires are so important and essential to your expansion and for you living your most aligned life and being who you were always born to be. So, can you talk a little bit about that, about how you personally don't limit your desires and how you constantly tune into what they are?
Yeah, it was a fascinating thing. So I learned that I got used to this is what led to the pipe clearing up like whole journey actually, to my knowledge, if I'm thinking back. I'm feeling so loopy and just present but not mental. Like my mind's struggling to like do linear things that like put timelines on things. But basically, I remember the moment I was admiring creators and influencers that had this really big flow of energy in their lives. They had a lot of things that I love and they were just having this very prolific flow of that kind of energy.
Like Lydia Millet.
Yeah, that
And like,
person, literally her, was the person that kind of alerted me. I was like, why do I really feel so inspired by her? And why do I really feel so connected? And one of things is that she's really gone through this inner journey. And so she's really feeling really well inside of herself. So there's something about that vibration that she's holding now more than she did in the past as she shares her transformation of her inside, but also her outside reality was so beautiful. And I just think we have different tastes and style. In some ways, and very similar in other ways. And I just was looking at her and realizing she wasn't limiting herself, but she would be willing to work hard for anything she wanted. And that's very much like my dad is the same way. I'm unlimited, but I'm not going to work hard for it. Like I know that's a limiting modality, but they're allowing that because mass consciousness has this belief that it is allowed. You're allowed to have everything if you work hard for it. But I just have to go that extra, new era further to say, no, it doesn't have to be hard. You can still have everything you want. But I wasn't, because I was noticing that myself, and unlike Lydia, and unlike her allowing everything in, but with hard work, I was not working hard, but I wasn't allowing every belief or every desire instantaneously. I would kind of like get an idea or desire for, let's say, something I wanted to buy, but that didn't mean I bought it right away. And I realized that sometimes it's because it's not the right time. It's not the flow yet to doing it. But other times it was just because I was used to having a certain drip, drip, drip from the pipe of my energy. And I didn't want more quickly that I could manifest, because then I would feel bad about myself or my ability to manifest. Does that make sense? This will only really make
makes total sense.
to people that have done manifesting stuff. This is going to make sense to you. If you've never done that, it might sound a little bit weird, but if you're into manifesting and you get used to what your cadence of manifesting and energy flow is, you might actually notice, you, like me, in order to not feel bad about how you're manifesting, you might slow down manifestations. So let's say on that online shopping order, I could have 3 packages a week, maybe a month, whatever it is, like that would be the cadence. And I was like, that's not actually in alignment to what I'm actually feeling inside of myself. And, or it could be ideas to implement in business or whatever the case is. So that realization that I was self-limiting and that I didn't need to, but I then needed to keep the vibration high enough to sustain the openness for all those desires. I was like, it was a very interesting period because I was not getting much sleep after that. I was like so open that I would like be up at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And it was a really funny and weird time, but I got a lot of things accomplished. I don't feel like now I'm in such an amped up version of it. I think I'm just more in a relaxed flow of things. It was fascinating to go through.
Well, it is fascinating. And you said, I wrote down, you said, we want you to stay up to date with your desires. The expansion of desire is so important for you. You often pretend that they aren't there. You often feel unhappy with yourself when it's not happening. So you slow yourself down. And I see this all the time. Like people don't even want to set goals if we're just talking about
Yeah.
something a little bit more tangible because they're worried they're not going to reach those goals. And so they don't even set them. They don't even try. Or like you said, things don't seem to be happening fast enough, or we think that there's a cadence that we need to follow because it's been working. But I think like number one, keep tuning into your desires and recognizing that they are always going to be changing and expanding. And that's part of your growth process. And then number two, play with this concept of speed for yourself. And the number three, to your point, like does manifesting have to go hand in hand with working hard?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the edge is the not working hard because it goes against, yes, consciousness belief. So it's easier to be in a Lydia or my father perspective because it's normal. It's it's accepted, but it's not accepted by the mainstream mass consciousness that you don't have to work hard. That would feel like privilege or too easy or not possible, etc. And that's because humans historically haven't known how to line up their energy well. So they haven't seen it actually be successful. It's not that it couldn't be, they just didn't know how to utilize it. It's like saying before Ben Franklin figured out there's electricity. Electricity was existing before Ben Franklin put the key into the kite and that it hit the thing. Electricity was present. We just didn't know how to utilize it. So it's not that hard work is necessary. We just haven't known how to utilize our vibration before that to not need to work hard, if that makes sense.
Oh, good. It makes sense. All right. So before we go, there's one question I always ask all of our guests on the show. What would you say is one way you can create a life that's better than your dreams and beyond what you could ever envision for yourself?
Well, I would say follow your inner voice. So learn how to use your inner voice, which is obviously my jam. So you can go to the podcast or my classes or to join a Sophia session if you even wanted to, or work with a facilitator. But literally, when I got the offer to sell the house and all my stuff the week before a trip to Europe in 2016, I asked my inner voice if I should, and it said yes. And I asked why, and it said, because you want a life you never imagined before. So literally, the way I got a life I never imagined before was following what it had in mind for me.
So beautiful. Thank you for that. And we'll link everything below so people can follow you and listen to the show and be a part of all of your incredible courses and programs. So for our podcast listeners and watchers, we're going to leave it there. For anyone who wants to watch the behind the scene episode and listen to all of the beanbag cleaning or clearing, is that what you call it?
Feedback.
Yeah. Beanbag releasing, go to dreamlifeclub.com and join us in that community. Thank you so much, Bella. Loved this conversation. You're incredible. I know we could speak for many more hours, but I appreciate you opening up our eyes to possibility and to desire and to living life in a different way.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the I Heart My Life show. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with 3 friends or post about it on social media using the hashtag I Heart My Life show. And don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. It really does help us spread the movement far and wide. Remember, everything you desire is possible. Keep believing in your dreams and taking action.